How do you get over the resentment you feel towards your partner? I'm excited to talk about this today because this was huge in my own relationship. Now, this is something that came up in a Facebook group. I was following a post and commenting, and someone was responding to me and asking, so exactly how do you get over this resentment, especially if it's been building up over many years? So we're going to talk about that today. Plus, at the end of the video, I'm going to call my husband and we're going to find out what he thinks about this. So make sure to stay tuned. Hi, everyone. Mireille Nicole here, relationship coach, plant-based mom, and non-toxic living nut. Today, we're going to talk about a very important topic because I was having a chat actually with a fellow relationship coach. And one of the things she was bringing up, and I so believe this myself, is that when you start feeling resentment towards your partner, resentment is building up in your relationship, that is really an important trigger to look at in terms of deciding whether or not, it's time to do something about what's going on in your dynamic as a couple. When you start feeling that resentment, usually it's a sign that there's something going on and there's something that you have the power or the opportunity to address to either make things better or make an important decision about the future of your relationship. So resentment was huge in my own love journey or my own love story with my current husband, especially back when we were dating. Although things started off really strong for us, there came a point in the relationship where we were just clearly lacking the tools and the skills to deal with the day-to-day life and the challenges that came our way. And one of the things we noticed and that really started impacting our relationship was this buildup of resentment that was happening over time. Like we refer to it kind of as like the undercurrent. Like we could tell that we were either holding stuff in and we were frustrated with one another, but we weren't saying anything. And this resentment was building up. I know for myself, I was really feeling it, but I just didn't know what to do about it. And it was keeping us in this negative cycle that we just couldn't loop out of. It was making us sensitive to everything that would happen. The smallest thing would trigger us. The smallest thing would lead to an argument, a full-blown fight, and it was just happening more and more frequently. And being super intuitive, like I remember like just sitting at the dining room table for supper and like literally feeling the resentment or those negative emotions. I'm not even going to try to describe what my partner was feeling. I'm going to let him talk about that at the end of the video, but I could just sense it was there. And because I saw like no way out of it, I was just there absorbing it and feeling it. And it was just creating even more frustration and resentment inside of me because I felt like I was the one who was entitled to feel more resentment. I always felt like I was the one who had more reason to be upset or holding on to things or building up, like I said, that resentment. So if this is you, I totally feel you right now. I was in your shoes. And I'm going to share with you today 3 important steps that I took to get out of that resentment, to really get over the resentment I felt towards my partner, because ultimately that was one of the big steps in turning our relationship from rocky and hitting rock bottom to turning into my happily ever after, my dream relationship that I always envisioned as a little girl. The first way I got over the resentment towards my partner was to start thinking about resentment the same way I think about anger. So if you've ever heard that old saying about anger, where anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Now that is super morbid, but I feel like it's such a clear illustration of what I was doing anyways in that situation. I thought by holding on to my resentment, it was really justified because of what was happening and what I felt was being kind of done to me in the relationship. And that if I was letting go of that resentment, it was like I was letting my partner get off scot-free. And like I was totally accepting what was going on or what I felt he was doing, where in fact, it's kind of like this poison and anger analogy where I was just hurting myself by holding on to that resentment and not dealing with it or coming to terms with it or making amends. The more and more I was holding on to that resentment, the more I was just feeding myself this poison and in fact poisoning the relationship as a whole, because what you feel in your relationship, what you're feeling inside of you just permeates everything else that's happening around you with your partner and the way you guys interact together. And I know it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, well, if he can tell that I'm upset or resentful, he's going to want to change something and do something different and fix it. But I have to say it goes both ways in the relationship. Like if you're feeling resentment and you feel right in believing and feeling what you feel and No, you are right in feeling that way. But if you hold on to it and you're waiting for the other person to do something and change something, they're likely thinking the same thing. So what actually helped in my own relationship was for me to snap out of it, stop drinking that poison of resentment, and actually dealing with what was happening in a healthy way. Because now I realized that me holding on to my resentment and not really dealing with it effectively was actually an unhealthy mechanism. And really, it wasn't that I was intentionally trying to do that. It's just that most of us growing up in our life experience, we aren't taught the tools that we need in terms of addressing situations like this, managing our emotions, and helping the dynamic between us and another person. So that's a segue into my number 2, where the second thing I did was to start learning very effective communication skills. A lot of times what happens is we feel resentment because either number 1, we're having a hard time expressing what we need, what we desire, or number 2, we're expressing it, but we're expressing it in a way that's not getting us what we need. So a really helpful way to get over the resentment is to learn how to express what we need in a very compassionate and loving way, in a way that's non-accusatory, as I always say, that doesn't lead our partners to feel feelings of guilt, shame, or blame. And that way we can feel really heard and validated in our relationship, and it helps the resentment disappear or not build up in the first place. On the flip side, maybe you are expressing what you need. Maybe you're saying it very often and it's annoying. And part of the resentment is the fact that you're saying these things over and over again and nothing changes. In this case, I would invite you to explore the way you're communicating. I know that there's this saying in love and relationships where, communication is key, and we have this idea that we just need to communicate more. And in some instances, yes, communicating more can be effective, but communicating more, if you're doing it in a skillful, effective fashion, that is ultimately what's going to make the difference. Because if you're just communicating more in a way that's going to stir up feelings of guilt, shame, or blame in the other person, you're just going to further the damage and keep building that resentment between the two of you. So when I started to learn exactly how to communicate what I needed or what I felt, and then learn to do it also in a way that was going to be productive and was going to be heard by my partner, the resentment started disappearing from our relationship. And the third thing, the last thing that I'm going to share today in terms of what I did to help get over the resentment towards my partner in our relationship was to stop taking everything so personally. When things were rocky in a relationship, it just felt like we were against one another and we were not on the same team. So a lot of the resentment on my part came from feeling like I was being attacked or he was doing something kind of against me or to be mean to me. And I started taking it really personally, and that made me upset because I felt differently about the situation, right? I didn't feel like I should have been getting kind of that treatment or being made to feel the way I was feeling. So then I would bottle it all up. And like I was sharing in the beginning too, because we were getting triggered by smaller things and the arguments were more frequent, at one point I was trying to even avoid these things because I just didn't want to start another argument. And so that was just leading up to even more resentment. But as I became more and more aware of this and stopped really taking everything so personally, and I'm making it sound easy, but this was a process, right? Then more and more I could really release kind of that undercurrent. I could go into a conversation or sit at the dining room table and not have all this resentment bubbling up inside of me that my partner could obviously feel. And even if he didn't feel it physically, just from my vibe, just by the way I expressed myself, my words, my nonverbal cues, it was obvious. So I really encourage you, if you're feeling a lot of resentment towards your partner, try to stop taking things so personally. Start really focusing again on being a team with your partner, not being pinned one against the other. And really start focusing on the love that you have for him, the love that you guys developed over the years or had in the beginning of the relationship, and start having fun together again. Okay, so this is my point of view, but I know you're super curious to find out what my husband thinks about this. So let's give him a call. Oh, hey, babe, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good. So you're on camera, and like we discussed, I was going to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
So full disclosure for the people watching, I did give my husband a heads up about what I was going to ask him about, just so that, you know what I mean. So
I didn't write anything down.
Okay. You didn't prepare. Oh. Anyways, so today in the video, we're talking about resentment and feeling resentment towards your partner. So I'm wondering, in your experience in the relationship with me, how did resentment play out for you?
Absolutely. I mean, things build up over time, even just little things, sometimes. Not going to point out anything specific, but I feel that, if you the resentment that I felt would affect other conversations or other interactions. So there would be sort of like just a underlying thing that would be there that might, multiply in other conversations, maybe.
Yeah, I was talking about how it kind of for a while it seemed like it was an undercurrent there all the time, and make it just it would make us like extra sensitive to things and take things personally too. I know that's something we talked about at one point, how when things started to get better and we started working on some of these things, we could take things less personally, and I think that contributed to less buildup too between us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just talking about those little things, even though they're small and you don't think they have any effect, they're worth talking about and just getting them out in the air and getting them off your chest and not letting those little things build up.
Yeah, for sure, communication. And that's actually one of the things I shared to get over resentment. So I'm glad you're confirming that right now.
Yeah, it just makes sense, right? It's just, you don't even remember what all those little things are. So it's like, it's really hard if you wait too long to be able to address them,
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you feel things are like now that we don't have so much resentment? And I don't want to make people feel like think we're all like perfect and we never feel resentment. I'm sure there must be moments where you and I still feel it, but I think it's a matter of having the knowledge now or the experience to get over it. Is there anything else that you would share?
I guess, those conversations we have, we have arguments, we have disagreements, but I don't feel they're, a serious feeling. They're just about the thing at hand and not the culmination of all these other things that have been built up.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing this. If people like these, ask your husband, ask my husband segments. You might be on the hook to do more of them. So there you have it. That's how my husband feels about resentment and how it played out in our own relationship. I'm curious, did you like having my husband share his opinion in these videos too? If so, let me know in the comments and we can get him back in future videos. If you have any questions about your own situation and how to get over resentment towards your own partner, feel free to comment below or reach out to me. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.